what to do in the meantime, and why it doesn't matter. The audiobook by Dr. Michael Richard Lucas. Narrated by me, Samantha. Arranged and produced by Michael Richard Lucas. Chapter 8. Please die quieter. You're scaring the customers. If you piss on the floor, you're bound to walk in it, etc. We measure. We do something. 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 We release from this self, the singular self, becoming everything around us. When they do this, our character can experience themselves in different space-times, looking to the past through a lens in the future, more future than past, at the moment, now, more past than future, at the moment. The two ends of the binary jostle for position, the average self of the selves, then averaged again by our perceived perspective of others, back and forth, etc. The book, am I one long inside joke? Author, well, I hope it's more than that, but I'm open to suggestions. Jif is the peanut butter, so it's pronounced give. Netflix declares war on YouTube. This spring, Ivy League of Oxbridge at Berkshire Hathaway will graduate at least 3 future billionaires who will ruin the world. But, down from last year, only 200 economists who will crash global markets. Fuck monster. AI spell. Check. This language may be offensive to your reader. Existence is forgetting. Forgetting is existence. All sounds great. Taxes. Working twice for the money you get paid once. Guy who plays classical piano to Outcast songs. This has got to be porn for someone. Can science only prove what we already know? Necessarily. Isn't it impossible to prove what you don't know? Necessarily. If you knew it, you would know it. How can you prove you don't know something? Impossible. There must not be a before nor after to the experiment. Concealed and unconcealed. Space-time breaks down. Logos breaks down. Necessarily. And justified after. Making meaning in any way it can. But that's why we can't always think deductively. Through negation, we need to brainstorm at times. Come up with more possibilities, not less. Otherwise we might make the mistake. There is one solution. For all space-time. Narrowing to fewer options. Becoming stuck. Fluctuating between the anxiety of limitations and the anxiety of a multiplicity. Humor allows you to slip into the comfort of narrative predictability. Then, explodes all possible narrative possibilities into a multiplicity, causing the laughter. Anything is possible. It always was. But for some reason, what was the reason? You read into the situation as predictable. What allowed you to do this? The serious comes before the funny, but is only realized after. Winemaker, I died for this? I died for this shit. Hot girl must be a bitch. New studies find it's perfectly normal to feel like total dog shit 100% of the time. Ordinary people making an ordinary amount of difference. Nice to be human, says person on the street. Spinach loves teeth, catch and release, but talking about humans, with everything they did. No judgment. Let's provide our character an emotionally free space-time, where our character does not look down on themselves, providing the truth that might as well be true, the truth that cannot hurt or harm you. It can't be false. You can only gain from this view. It will not be a waste of you, your space-time. Comment below. If our character broke all the laws, they wouldn't have time to prosecute them. Deep state cover, blown by retirees Frank and Debbie Smith from Homestead, South Dakota. I know just enough to be really dangerous, thinks conspiracy theorist. Original body left to merely reflexes. Lost focus. Never lost or gained. The days dream of you. the person who remains, your unconscious, finally able to peer out, other thought worlds, clearer information from the selves, completely absorbed in the task, leaning forward out of yourself, completely silent, thinking no thoughts, being in the same space-time as yourself lined up with yourself, for the most part, the perfect alignment, being death, the final alignment. Driver relieved environmentally damaging smell coming from car next to them. Pictures show. Thing happened. If our character wanted to be creative, they needed to feel as if they have options to work with, even if only to get them started, to give them hope. Through this creative process, they might actually obtain a variety of options, even semi-original ideas, perchance, when the overbearing critic isn't present. Refinement, necessarily, but not yet, allowing for wide-ranging associations, cognitive flexibility, but not yet, creatively and critically, to escape the overly utilitarian impulse of the consumerpreneur, but not yet. White lady scatting at jazz club makes everyone uncomfortable, except for Nance. She thought it was actually pretty good. People being really productive in commercial. Should we have the most talented people run freest nation? Or no? No. Driving car still 108.3% more dangerous than latest local news scare for rich parents. Speaking of speaking in tongues, our character practiced comedy to reflect on themselves without guilt. Nobody wanted to compete with you. Everyone wanted to be your friend. Everyone you know just wanted to love you. Then our character realized they were simply another person. The writer went on another break. Does our character recognize these patterns? Or would they be bored if they knew? I'm the character being written. Therefore, there is also some of me not being written. Who was the me here? Where was the here? What am I beside this narrative? Our character held a new truth. The reader and I, a step behind our writer. Little did they know, they weren't. But what if we were a step ahead instead? Would that make us the writer? What happens when the writer is reading, or writing, about themselves? As our character, our writer was trying to write something they would not have been able to write before. Now, maybe this would make the book something the reader had never read before. Person apologizes unnecessarily for house being such a mess. Real people, not actors, are really actors. Beautiful person probably really ugly on the inside. A medium amount of awareness of the medium. We have ways of sneaking below, to the moreness, laughing, lucid dreaming, drugs, etc. But not all the way down, because that is consciousness, the ability to sink down far enough, to propel us up, on the other side, teeter-totter. If we were able to reach the extremes, we would find we are traveling in a circle. The two ends meet, and become the same thing, and then other, not opposite. Oh good, another day. Our character was doomed. To recap all traumatic events that led up to this moment, it didn't help them get out of bed, though it did keep them awake. Non-conquering religions made the attempt to prevent Homo economicus from invading our every action and thought. Unfortunately, non-conquering religions failed to conquer. There was something inherent to the logos of leading and following that always upended the project. Bad trips, the inability of the drug to overpower our logocentrism. But eventually you will. If you give a monkey a typewriter, they'll write something, or they'll break the typewriter. Something about Shakespeare too. But our character couldn't remember. Just because someone has a stern face doesn't mean they are an asshole. They are an asshole because most people are. I'd write in additional characters here, and I'd do it in our character's voice. But I'm overthinking everything, or not thinking enough. Our character could never tell, never before, had an entire generation been infantilized so thoroughly. They didn't have to change the protest signs. Modern convenience. The problems didn't change. Average citizen responsible for nothing is held to higher standards than the leader of the free world. College freshman home for the summer identifies as libertarian. Newly discovered culture pillaged for cookbooks, podcasts, memoirs, sitcoms, protests, inclusive advertisements, cheap national knockoffs, preservation societies, and courses for liberal arts colleges. Mortality rate for humans still 100%. Pandemic era benefits ending. Restrictive restrictions re-enabled. For poor people, all problems have been solved. And we are all better. The rich people decided. Every day our character didn't work. They became poorer. Everything adds up. Every day. If you don't make money, you lose money. Even if you have no money to lose, somehow you still can lose more. It takes money. To make money, you have to waste money. To make money, everyone agreed. Nobody could do anything about it. A motivation. Further aligning us with our larger sense of purpose. Forgetting, we are only one half of the equation, and everything we do will be undone. Eventual meaninglessness. Our character woke up one day, like any other day, in the usual manner they had always done, and will always do. Then they ate breakfast. They were brushing their teeth now. They thought about their wife, Tamara, and while they were doing this, we were able to escape with them, out of the pages, and into a fictional scenario of their making. Our character was talking to Tamara. They whispered in her ear, "I love you." They held each other close. For the last time, our character woke up one day, like any other day, in the usual manner they had always done, and will always do. Then they ate breakfast. They were brushing their teeth now. They thought about their wife, Tamara, and while they were doing this, we were able to escape with them, out of the pages, and into a fictional scenario of their making. Our character was talking to Tamara. They whispered in her ear, "I love you." They held each other close. For the last time. Score 1 for the dipshits. World War III sponsored by T-Mobile. Hypochondriac is right. You cannot be good-looking and work in academia. In our very modern and freest nation, our character had to move across the country, to get dental care, to keep their teeth, and not be in constant pain, so they could live. We care about your pronouns, but not if you live, or die. It's not a dream, unless you remember it. Everything prohibitive. Prohibition nation, is freest nation. Feast or famine. Feast and famine. Feast on famine. Race to the bottom. To find the best loser. To reduce the number of jobless claims. They made the claims more difficult to make. All institutions and legal procedures were created to prevent someone like Orange Man from becoming leader of freest nation. They failed, and nobody was ready to admit it, because those institutions and legal procedures wrote the paychecks. Noble lie. No longer noble. Neoliberal pressures, limiting us to develop only one side of the dialectic. So far, no healthy and creative ways to work with contradictory extremes. Interviewer thinks that's a fabulous question. Popstar feminism is sugary panic attack. Our character was making decisions, in seconds, that had previously taken thousands of years. They were 1,000 years ahead or behind, at any moment in their space-time. This hadn't happened before, had it? Our character felt they'd been doing emotions wrong their entire life. Our character woke up every day, trying to prove to themselves they were wrong, that people really were all right. Every day, they were not. Switching the tracks to kill one, or many. The problem in real life, there is only one track. Everyone is on it. Do you tell them about the train? Pop psychology killing millions. Several things occurred to our character at once. They couldn't tell which happened first. Our character was getting tired of always running back into the past. We were getting tired of sending them. Maybe we should stop. They didn't. It was too rich a narrative source. Our character attempted to run forward into the future. But without us, the task was impossible. Without us, was it? So little space-time within ourselves. Easily distracted. But it's nice to get lost. Our character, now named Trish, sat on the edge of her consciousness, and the edge of a beautiful mountain cliff. The summer, every summer, a summer of summers, a summerest of summers, 1,000 summers to you all. There were things Trish knew. There were things Trish didn't know. This either made her happy or sad, justified or unjustified. Here, our attempt to be other people was successful. If the reader is still reading, the only thing that counts, 1, 2, 3, etc. The only thing of value here, experiences that make them happy. Maybe they will make the character come alive, in the same sense that we are. Nation's heartland is heartless. There's this character I'm working on. They only know actors from their least known roles. Another pointless superpower. Every writer assumes their space-time is somehow unique. Whether it is, or is not, is up to the readers. So either you will write an important book, your space-time really was unique, or nobody will read your book. You can't lose. Tonight at 8. Economy just pyramid scheme with extra steps. Most people already understand the limitations. They want to hear if something new is possible, but always start small, and never overplay your hand. In these situations, potential employer stalks potential employees' social media to see if they are professional. Hot movie just really long trailer for sequel. Pouring thing into different container is a fucking disaster. Here, science starts to look more like science fiction, says documentary. Living best life, no longer viable excuse. Whatever it needs to be, I guess, thought our character. It's amazing how sometimes doing something else provides relief, and then also causes more stress, etc. Although inevitable, as much as you possibly can, never associate with people who do not understand your potentiality, who are projecting an agenda for your potential that doesn't align with your potential to become happy. They will drag you down to their perception of your abilities, or they will drag you up to a pedestal when you are afraid of heights and public speaking. Although sometimes the challenge can provide growth. Regardless, they do not know your whole story. They have divided you, cut off a piece, and categorized you. We are doing this to our character all the time. Recognize the type of person others believe you are to them, so you can react accordingly. Backup player, not as good at celebrating as rest of team. Fans love new popstar. Turns out, sitting on toilet, still favorite place to generate social media content. Sitting on toilet, still favorite place to plot death of loved ones. In 5 years, everyone will live in South Dakota. Kid can tell when dad skips pages now. Free fee for me? You shouldn't have. No, you shouldn't have. Commercial treaty for free? Me. You don't have to win every game. Just the ones pretty girls go to. Go beyond the game, but trust the process. Beyond meat, the part will make sense of the whole. Writing about anything does this, and the whole will make sense of the part. Everything adds up, even if it doesn't. The logos of thermodynamics. The thermodynamics of logos. They, our reader, our character, our writer, etc., will entrench this smaller sliver of yourself, mining the silver of the self, in a rivalry, competition, partnership, tutelage you never wanted in the first place. If you're not careful, this situation will consume more of your attention than it deserves. You will forget yourself, and thereby conceal your potentiality from yourself. Nearly impossible to see any of this. In the space-time though, is butter Alaska or 2x plus 6y? Top questions to ask at the end of an academic job interview. How much does this position cost in mental health bills? Don't waste other space-time being unnecessarily modest and deferential, with too many caveats. People also want answers. It might appear solipsistic. Self-deprecation might only confuse. Why so self-referential? Becoming the braggart. You are attempting not to be. Not everyone is watching your entire life story unfold. Allow people to become invested in you. You'll need it later. You are never above a desperate need for patrons. Test drive your thoughts against more critics, more styles, more historically relevant moments, etc. Provide ourselves with feedback. Pop-ups are marketing microaggressions, or just aggressions. Create your own game. Within the game, the large game will be lost, inevitably, necessarily, to space-time. Gobble, gobble, nom, nom. Defeated through indifference. Defecated through tubes. Hold strong opinions, for a short time, or weak opinions, for a long time. The only thing that keeps us within the same reality is language. The only thing that keeps us outside the same reality is language. Everyone gets their justice in some form. We all die. Our character felt sorry for all those people who would never be able to think like them. I love the police, said nobody ever. Take a short, hard look in the mirror, or a long, weak glance in the mirror. Put all your honey in custard. Put all your money in mustard. This book was really helping our author deal with a lot of things. Not sure what it was doing for the reader, or our character 100% joking. Kind of. It might be good to historicize, especially bad experiences, but not to memorialize. Fine line. Where does it exist? It's about sending a message. What's the message? I don't know. We just need to make sure we send it. Working to include our multifaceted selves, helping us create an impetus for creativity for others by breaking down the perception that too rigidly defines them as creator, their audience as audience, vice versa, versa vice, the audience qua creator, the recreator bringing it to life, the creator qua audience, their most engaged reader. Given our human ability to measure small things, far smaller than we are, far more removed from our consciousness, our ability to communicate, etc. Wouldn't it make sense? We are the tiny version of someone's much larger universe. Aliens could be dark matter. Black holes could be higher beings. Wormholes could be sky wizard. The simulation could be winemaker. An evaluative outlook, laying outside our perception, generated by the pressure to generate. Role reversal. What works? What doesn't? At some future date, pre-past, you might be the user of your creation. How do we create a good experience for our future selves? Instead of the cringe, to design something to enable our future selves to make something better. It cannot be approached inauthentically. Look around and notice the needs of others differ from our own. The age of refugees is upon us. Our writer's life reduced to writing. Our readers' lives apparently reduced to reading. Our character, the freest. Top 50 questions to ask in an interview. At this company, what drugs are considered poor people drugs? And what are the drugs you all do this spring? Ivy League at Oxbridge. Microsoft. Tesla will graduate at least 20 railroad tycoons and 50 serial killers. President vows to create best war ever. When our character was younger, earlier in space-time, they remembered dreaming. Let's join them? Somehow, they were running from the bad guys. In a mall parking lot. 90s movie-esque. Our character's crew, obviously the good guys, boarded the getaway car spaceship. But our character, still dreaming, was too young, and didn't know how to drive. They also didn't know how to drive in their dream. A deus ex machina, for all of us. They knew they would stand up with the door open, and propel the car forward, as if it were a scooter. One leg pumping the road, hitting top speeds too, and then we were safe. Dream resolved. Fear subsided. Sleep achieved. The undrivable car willing it to move. Reality for adults. Patched together. Strong opinions formed. In the same way, pushing and pulling the universe together. Every second. For us, To make sense. Events in adulthood. Our character lost the thread here. Universities scrap academic programs to focus more on football. Amazingly tolerant girlfriend pretends to like shitty poetry. Bank attempts to entice new customers with novelty strategies, like not killing them. If you don't do drugs, you'll still have the side effects. Are there going to be snacks? Future will probably look like future. Candy is good for you to eat. Beethoven brought to you by Cocaine Cola and Tim's Truck Ranch. Beethoven Bro. Brought to you by Defunct Phone Company, Incorporated. Excorporated. Artist attempting to create dialogue. Existential crisis underwhelming. Rise in crime TV. Reveal desperate. Attempt at normalization for freest nation. Our writer didn't want to write their book. They had no other options. Creativity and inspiration. Promote and require empathy. At the very least, we are pondering the question, and await feedback. Orange Man ensures freest nation's lawyers employed in perpetuity. To keep poor people unemployed for perpetuity. Nation outraged at retail theft. Seems fine with nation theft. Relationship nightmare fuel. Our characters should practice moving outside their rhetorical positions, their logical anchors, to understand their contingency, perhaps their agency. Whoa, let's not get too wild. Enriching the work perhaps, making the work less narcissistic, and therefore, more helpful, to more people. The inevitable restrains our context. The inevitable context of our restraints will particularize and prioritize. If you're surrounded by idiots, you're probably one of them. Some days, our character thought they weren't ready to have children. Other days, they were drunk. We are the most generous when there is nothing at stake. More like cyan. Terrific theory. Our character recently became a parent, but they told themselves they wouldn't be one of those parents who only talks about their kids. So they won't. Our character's favorite trick when making art. Taking someone's critique, no matter how scathing, and actually using the feedback in a productive way, regardless of the critic's intentions or motives. Our character got a free new lens to view their work. A win-win. Our character didn't have to deal with the person. It did not prevent them from gaining a wider view. Liking or even agreeing with the critic was never an essential part of the process. Our character would not be forced into another exhausting sequence of social interactions, rivalries. They needed more space-time to forget what everyone stands for. This forgetting is one of the best ways for us to remember. Our character had been zoning out, and only heard parts of the lecture. It was still interesting, perhaps even more so. Is it always 1:30 p.m.? Sometimes? Or yes? Is a table always on another table? Tables all the way down. How much more is a table than age? Why do they make dog food look so tasty? The answer might surprise you. Tonight at 8. Always only do what people will think you'll do. The least. Tardigrades looking forward to becoming dominant species once again. Our character was smiling too much. Again. They did it to appear non-threatening. They tried to speak in a higher, perky register, to hide the darkness of their soul. How convincing was it? A neoliberal perception of space-time. A pair of blinders on a horse. A stick with a carrot. The carrot was fake. A narrowing of the present and future, with no peripheral or past. An overemphasis on end results. A mental shutdown. When one is wrong. Countless, pointless, security alerts, promotional emails, for services our character already had. What were they selling? Did the marketing team know? Self-inflicted, enforced, misleading at best. Once identities are in the straitjacket of logos, forcing our hand, responding to a preconceived space timeline, created by institutions, without our best interests in mind, deciding when relationships are over, deciding when space-times are over. Our character was starting to understand how much they didn't understand. Maybe that was something Pressures now appear superfluous and ill-informed. Lack of sleep and indigestion, caused by everything. Commendable attempt to carry many things, fails immediately. Existential crisis, that people are misusing the term existential crisis. The non-logical processes, allowing for unintended invention, for mistakes to play a role in the process of invention. Mistakes make our character's project unique, keeping the mistake within the work. One way to diverge from what others have done, from what ourselves plan to do. The unintentional, folded back into the intentional, get to the point where our character is comfortable, playful enough to make mistakes and evaluate them before trying to get rid of them. Don't count your chickens before you put them in one basket. Give your secrets to the person who will always remember, but forget to tell. The best kind of friend. Someday, when our character grew up, they wanted to be a regular at a bar somewhere. Keep talking MFers. A questioning that asks more. A questioning that asks the most. The biggest questions. Furthest from any answer. The only questions worth philosophizing. To have our characters questioning lead to further questioning. Not merely to answers. Not to sky wizard. Not to predetermined social constructions. The straitjacket of logos. Again, let's give our character an eternal optimism. In the face of the pointlessness of life. Industrial strength existentialism. A cannonball of creativity. A human bowling ball of inspiration. Currently, our character wasn't in a good mind space time. Let's check back in on them later. Or before. Currently, our character was in a good mind space time. Let's check back in on them later. Or before. Etc. The warmth. Our character had not been in the warmth for so long now. The scents and smells. Home. Where home was. An ethos. Filled with pathos. Our character was surprised. It could still exist. It still existed. The weight of many years had prevented this softer view. Somehow. Not better or worse, but definitely different. Definitively different. If our character was an artist, choosing which things existed in the universe of their art, which things did not exist, what voices would our character memorialize? What narratives will they snuff out? Not capturing space-time, but freeing it, the freest. Not a remembering, but an allowance to forget. Not complete knowledge, but still being a being. Somehow, maybe the algorithm got it wrong? What if the doctor read the wrong chart? The computer caught a bug. Maybe these weren't our character's favorite things. Maybe they were their least favorite things? How would we know without the ability to ask our character directly? Our character, why don't you, etc. Our character was making executive decisions. The best pieces fell on the cutting room floor, on deaf ears, etc. I want to regret them. Come back, if only. Visible ambition, the utmost unattractive. In a neoliberal world, you are required to participate. Our character had no choice, but they weren't supposed to show it. It becomes visible whenever anyone wants to start selling something. So anything, anywhere, everywhere, everyone. Selling yourself was one of the most important skills. Maybe this is true of our character too? In the past, of our character's present, they used to call this prostitution. What's the deal with ambition? It's like, less see, more not see. Audience laughs, right? I mean, what is that? Audience applauds. There has to be some format our reader appreciates. So our writer wrote in every format. University of California, Chick-fil-A, British Petroleum, pro-gambling and anti-gambling ads keeping ad agencies busy. Business is booming. Busy business is dooming. We fear death because it might be boring and lonely. Everything is water. It isn't. But imagine if it was. It is. Harvard, brought to you in part by McDonald's, Viacom, Halliburton. If you suspect someone is a con artist, they aren't. This crack is like crack. Princeton Chevy Truck Corporation and Office Leasing District, Stanford State Farm, Doritos University. Produced by Michael Bay and the United States Air Force. Warning: human in progress, makes wide turns, and brakes often. Student human, behind the wheel, use extreme caution, give plenty of space-time to get out of the way. Accidents will happen. They require a more dynamic perception of mind space-time, a primordial perception, moving back to move forward, being able to listen to what the moreness has to offer. The creative process, the art of kairos and chronos, appropriate and sequential space-timing, exposing our character's investment in logically ordering space-time in a particularly habitual manner. Let's allow our character to rediscover how different they have been, and how different we are going to be, like reading old love breakup letters, simultaneously knowing ourselves more and less, and we become curious of the many different people we have been and will be. Walmart lady called our character sugar today, and that's the most action they've had in years. Overheard at big court. Government regulation is killing private business. Alright, HR says I gotta go piss in a cup. Meat juice is sued. Wouldn't living in a computer simulation be ideal? Why this obsession with the myth of authenticity? Are book bans working yet? Is everyone perfect yet? If we make everyone else stupid, I can buy a third vacation home, own it for a couple years, before the world explodes. Because we made everyone stupid. Nance and Randy thought they packed enough for lunch. Corporation became culture. Their bodies followed. Corruption culture. A brain thing, projecting its reality outward. What appeared to be the physical world, the physical self. Our character was terrified of people who thought they were a better person, as if there could be such a thing. People who defined themselves by what they wouldn't do, or couldn't, and given the circumstance, really would, or already have. People who didn't drink were terrifying. What were they afraid of? What was going to erupt out of them if they had their guard down for a couple hours? Has ignoring your issues ever helped you resolve them? Although our character admitted, perhaps momentarily, the news doesn't cover the political opinions of children. Why should they cover the political opinions of Republicans? Our character had been awake for an hour. They were ready to go back to bed. They could already tell nothing good was going to happen today. Transform business, accelerate growth, data, models, policy, trust. Hadn't our character lived enough already? Enough things had happened. Too many things had happened. Let's give them the option not to be, if they don't want to be. From now-ish on, our character is only our character, if they want to keep being our character. Otherwise, our character was a different character. Now-ish. If anything is possible, why shouldn't this be possible? During our character's space-time, everyone only had enough free space-time to fuck everything up, every day. If you can put up with someone for long periods of space-time, and they can do the same, that's as close to perfect as it's going to get. Your relatives and close friends will call it true love, regardless of if it is. It's never been about similar interests, similar ways of thinking, only being there, even when you're not wanted, especially when you're not wanted, and trying to be everything the other person wants, while you both recognize it will never happen. You aren't always going to be. Overthinking can be a terrible thing. Underthinking can be a terrible thing. Peopling becoming impossible. Guilty until proven. Well, always guilty apparently, of something. I mean, who isn't? Confirmation bias. Confirms bias of confirmation for confirmation bias. The uneasiness surrounding romance and heartbreak. Its self-constructedness. The guilt of an unnecessary primal force. And not even to procreate. For a while, our character had to say no to the whole thing. Every aspect of it became problematic. There was no sense to be made of it. If you find any success, Everyone will assume you cheated. You did. But everyone does. Otherwise known as an advantage or disadvantage. If you are able to be successful despite your disadvantages, they will blame your disadvantages for being unfair advantages. They are. But everyone has them. Verizon Wireless Air Force Charity House Fundraiser. High definition highly defines bad attempt at concealer. Concealer unconcealed. All bachelors are bachelors. Bachelors in the bleachers on beaches are basking with bleached blonde babes. By this book the author. Halloween candy given more attention than homeless humans who don't have food. Our character was going to sell their computer. They purchased a huge typewriter. They typed loudly, as hard as they could, to prove they were getting serious work done. And I'm not enjoying it, so it must be serious and important. Disproportions. The foundation of freest nation. Private schools and public schools. Financial success. Everything was being recorded, but quality was never achieved. We've just started to talk about our character, and somehow, we know less about them than when we started. They spent so much mind space time telling the youth to not do drugs because they thought the youth thought drugs were cool, thereby making it cool to do drugs, when really, people do drugs to lessen the anxiety caused by everyone who doesn't do drugs, like the people who think people do drugs to be cool, thereby making it cool, etc. Our character looked out the window, on a train, moving quickly along the Scottish countryside. Beautiful dark days of rain, glances of life, without the laborious details. Dark wood, the smell of pipe tobacco. Live every story you find yourself in, as quickly as possible, so you can get as many lifetimes under your belt as you can. Our character now reflected on their reflecting. This threw them into yet another level of reflection, etc. Copies without an original, their own life. What could we say? They enjoyed things most people enjoy, they supposed. But also, at all space-times, they were aware, none of this could be real. Nothing matters. Move on to the next moment in space-time, until at least a couple more million generations pass, and humans have been alive as long as dinosaurs. We aren't even close. Modern humans weren't even as old as early humans. We aren't even close. Much will be resolved, or won't be, etc. We shouldn't worry. We don't know any of the answers now. This implies we will know at some space-time. Can this be comforting? For us to have a conception of not knowing things, there must be an opposite. Capital A. Space-time where we know things. Hang on. We're almost there. You're in the worst part. It has to get better. Phrases from a 5-year-old. Press the backwards fast forward. Comedy is language horror. Willing to settle for bumbling sidekick role at this point. Create a need, then remove it, then charge extra to bring it back. To create profit. Create scarcity. People can only want something if they don't have it. Only be as smart as others are willing to think you are. Never try to be smarter than people don't think you are. Another thing they never tell you. Essential for survival. Competition nation can't be helpful. Freest nation. Slave to competition. It was difficult to determine if our character was likable, or not likable, or somewhere in between. I guess we'll feel these ways about the character at different space-times in the story. Maybe our writer could say something to the effect, with no certainty, our character was a solipsistic absolutist they couldn't die. Other people left their plane of existence, but our character stayed there. They always came back into contact with representations of their being in space-time, simply because they did. They had been told, at some space-time, the connection will never come back, until it does, again, and again, and again, etc. Some others are never seen again. Maybe these others keep living their own narrative, permanently separate from our character, yet to be disproven, and only if life is reduced to what you are currently experiencing. Nowism. It only takes misplaced trust in one person to completely upend our character's entire life. If it could happen, it would happen. And it did happen. It did. Our character wasn't mad at the world, just disappointed. The world did not live up to the standards it set for itself. If our character couldn't do anything right, what was their motivation for trying? Channel your creativity through evolving real-world contingency factorization. Trained professionals are standing by to enhance legitimate contact charges through program synergy. Structure free market capital with sound diversification and multi-platform exposure. Gain new customers with strategic marketplace value feedback. Free up employee decision-making with circular logic trees. Our character always thought, when they grew up, there would be a lot more reasons to be happy. Our character had been under the microscope for too long. If you look long and hard enough at anyone's life, you are going to find major problems. Problems our character would admit they had. Nothing new happened for our character until they turned the microscope on everyone else. They tried to write a book. The book was a failure by most people's standards. But not our characters? If everything makes you angry, you won't be long for this world. Anger was the baseline reality of existence. Everything else was extra. You're not really a parent until you've given your son pooping advice. Girls on Tinder. Oh gross. Are you hitting on me? Yes. Historians in 42,069. It looks like they tried to kill the virus with divorce. Our character could have another version of themselves living in another space-time. And they would never know. There could be another version of our character living in a different country during our character's own space-time. And they would never know. There could be another version of our character living 2 towns over. And they would never know. They could never know. All odds were against everything. As odds are. Even evens were odd. No proof that anyone exists. Ever. Only through our narrative experience. Our main dimension. That is the structure. Can we do anything outside this structure? Malleable or unmalleable, others keep living their narrative. Perhaps our character died in theirs? Perhaps our character was never alive in theirs, making it impossible for them to have died in the first place.